Hey guys, what's going on? Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. Here in this video, I wanted to do a follow-up of last week's lesson. So last week's lesson is about connecting arpeggios all up and down the entire neck of the guitar. So what an arpeggio pathway is, as a quick review, is if you have a major chord or a minor chord and you want to solo over that specific chord using arpeggios, the way you do that is you just figure out what the notes of that specific chord are. So if you come across a C major chord, for example, you recognize that the C major chord has the notes C, E, and G in it. So you find all your C's, E's, and G's up and down the neck of the guitar, and that's going to give you your arpeggio pathway for that specific chord. The same holds true for minor chords. If you come across an A minor chord or something, you look at the notes of the A minor chord, A, C, and E. You find all your A's, C's, and E's on the neck of the guitar, and that's your arpeggio pathway for that specific minor chord. So that's what last week's video is about. This week's video, we're going to be looking at 4-note arpeggios. We're going to be looking at the 7th variation of different major and minor chords. So it's slightly more advanced, but if you watched last week's video and you were able to follow through with that or follow along with that, this won't be too much more difficult. So this is just going to make your arpeggio run sound a bit more melodic. So that's what this is about. Alright, so in the previous video we had mapped out the arpeggio pathways for the C major chord, the F major chord, the G major chord, and the A minor chord. In this video we're going to be looking at those same pathways, but we're just going to be adding one additional note to each one. So for the C major chord, we're going to be adding what is known as the major 7th interval, resulting in a C major 7 arpeggio. For the F major chord, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to add a major 7th interval to the F major arpeggio. For the G major chord, we're going to be adding what is known as the flat 7 interval. That's going to result in what is known as a dominant 7th arpeggio. So a major 7th is a major triad with a major 7th interval. A dominant 7th is a major triad with a flat 7 interval. It results in a different sound. Alright, so that's the other one. So then when we get to the A minor arpeggio pathway, we're going to form a minor 7th arpeggio. So a minor 7th is a minor triad with that same flat 7th interval that you will find in a dominant 7th arpeggio. So I know this can sound a bit confusing if you're not familiar with 7th chords, but there's just two types of 7ths. There's a 7th that resides 1/2 step below the root, and then there's a 7th that resides 1 whole step below the root. So if it's a major 7 type of arpeggio, it resides 1/2 step below the root. If it's a dominant 7th arpeggio, it resides 1 whole step below the root. If it's a minor 7th arpeggio, it resides 1 whole step below the root as well. So two types of 7ths. Figure out which 7th you're adding to either your major or minor arpeggio pathway, and that's all there is to it. Alright, so what you see here on the screen is the arpeggio pathway for the C major chord. This is just 3 notes. It's the notes C, E, and G. Those are the 3 notes that make up the C major triad. So just a quick review of how the cage system works. It always spells the word caged. So this is the C major arpeggio pathway in the C shape. So C and then A. This is the C major arpeggio pathway in the A shape. And then here's the C major arpeggio in the G shape, C, A, G. C, A, G, E. E would be the next shape. C, A, G, E, D. D is the final shape. And then it starts back over on the C shape again. And you can keep moving up the fretboard until you run out of frets, just spelling the word caged. It always goes in that order. C, A, G, E, D. C, A, G. Always spells the word caged. So, if I want to turn this into a major 7th arpeggio pathway instead of just a major triad arpeggio pathway, I just have to add in that major 7th interval, which resides 1/2 step below the root. So the root of this chord is C, because it's a C major chord. So 1/2 step below every single C is going to be the note B. That is going to be my major 7th interval that creates the major 7th arpeggio pathway. So I colored the notes, the 7ths blue, so it kind of sticks out for you so you can differentiate between what the triad notes are and what the 7th note is. But anytime you're trying to make up these major 7th arpeggios, just incorporate that into your run. All right, so now that we have our arpeggio pathway mapped out across the entire neck of the guitar with this added note B now, we now have 4 notes to work with. Check out this quick demo of some arpeggio runs that I came up with. One more time. All right, so that was the major 7th arpeggio pathway that I came up with for the C major chord. So let's now look at it for an F major chord. All right, so what you see here is the arpeggio pathway for the F major chord. The F major chord consists of the notes F, A, and C. So let's just do a quick review of the cage shapes for this particular major chord. So the lowest possible shape for this one is going to be in the E shape. So here's your F major chord in the E shape. So if that's the E shape, it always spells the word caged. So C-A-G-E. The next one is going to be the D shape. So here's E shape, here's the D shape. And then it starts back over on the C shape. Then C, then A. C, A, G. C, A, G, E. And that's exactly where we started at down here, just an octave higher. So it always spells the word caged. We just happen to start on the E shape because that's the lowest available shape for the F major chord. So we want to turn this into a major 7th arpeggio again. So we do that by locating the note that is 1/2 step below the root. So the root in this case is the note F. 1/2 step below the root F, or the note F, is going to be the note E. So everything that you see here, all these blue dots, are going to be your E. That's going to be your major 7th interval. And that's what we're going to incorporate to make a major 7th arpeggio pathway. So check out the run that I came up with, and then we'll look at the tabs for it again. All right, so that was my major 7th arpeggio run for the F major chord. Let's now look at the G major chord. All right, again, we're starting out with our just basic major arpeggio pathway. So the notes of a G major chord are the notes G, B, and D. So you see all the G's, B's, and D's up and down the neck of the guitar. Let's just run through the cage shapes real quick. So our lowest available cage shape for the G major chord is here. So that's a G major chord in the G shape. So if C, A, G, the next shape is going to be E. So here's the G major chord in the E shape. So E shape, then the D shape, and then the C shape, and then the A shape, and then the G shape. And that's where we started at down here, just an octave higher. So for this one, we're going to turn this into a dominant 7th arpeggio pathway. For the previous two, we made it into a major 7th. Now we're looking at a dominant 7th. A dominant 7th is just indicated in the chord symbol by a 7. So when you see G7, that's just another name for a G dominant 7 chord. Same thing. So as I said, that type of 7th is found 1 whole step below the root, whereas the major 7th interval is only found 1/2 step below the root. So everywhere I see a G, my note 1 whole step below the note G is going to be the note F. That's going to be my flat 7 interval, and that's going to result in my dominant 7th arpeggio pathway. All right, so every blue dot that you see on the screen here is going to be your note F. That's your 7th interval for this dominant 7th arpeggio pathway. Check out the run that I came up with, and then we'll look at the tabs for it. All right, so that's just the arpeggio pathway that I came up with for this chord, and I'm just giving you examples, and I'm giving you the roadmap. The objective is for you to come up with your own arpeggio runs. So that's what I came up with for the G dominant 7th arpeggio pathway. Let's now look at the A minor. So here we have our A minor chord mapped out across the entire fretboard. The notes of an A minor chord are the notes A, C, and E. So in the previous video, we looked at how you can derive this minor arpeggio pathway from the major arpeggio pathway. So if you want to map out an A major chord across the entire neck of the guitar, determine where the third is within that arpeggio pathway, lower the third by 1/2 step. That's what we have here. We did that in the last video. So the other thing I talked about in the last video was that instead of focusing on 5 shapes for the minor arpeggio pathway, I kind of just focus on 3 shapes. If you want to use 5 shapes, that's fine. Whatever it takes to get the job done, just as long as you're focusing on the correct notes, it doesn't really matter. But I just prefer to use 3 shapes. So this is the one shape I like. Then I like this shape. Then I like this shape. And then of course it repeats once we get to the 12th fret. So I just use those 3 shapes when I'm mapping out my runs. So that's that. So now we're going to add the 7th to it to create an A minor 7 chord. So a minor 7th chord has the same type of 7th that is found in a dominant 7th chord. The difference between the two types of chords is that a dominant 7th chord is a major triad with a flat 7 interval. A minor 7th chord is a minor triad with a flat 7 interval. So everywhere you have your root, you're going to find that flat 7 interval 1 whole step lower. So anywhere you have the note A, you're going to add in your note G. That's 1 whole step lower than the note A. Again, it's indicated by the blue dot to differentiate between the triad notes and the 7th. So that's that. So check out my arpeggio demo here, and then we'll look at the tabs for it. All right, so that was the run I came up with for the A minor 7 arpeggio using this pathway. And I really only added 7ths when I was up here. So I added the 7th here and here. So I added 7ths there. But then when I came down here, I just kind of stuck to triad notes. And then when I came down to here, I just ended on 1 single note. So I could have added in 7ths here. I could have added in 7ths here. You can do whatever you want. The objective is figure out your pathway, map out your pathway, and then just come up with runs that fit in time. So again, my timing was the same. It was 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and I was using 8th notes for my runs, but I just chose to incorporate 7ths here and not here or here. That was just what I came up with. All right. If you want to add these 7ths in, add them in wherever you find them. The fretboard is yours for the taking. All right, that's where the art comes in. So that's what I did for the A minor 7 chord. So the next step is to combine them all together into a chord progression. So check that out. All right, so something I wanted you to take from that is that the rhythm section just contained basic major and minor chords. It was the exact same rhythm section that we used in last week's video, where we just used basic major and minor arpeggio paths. So what's that saying is you don't have to have a 7th chord in the rhythm section in order to play a 7th arpeggio in the lead. That's not a requirement. So over a basic C major chord, I played a C major 7 arpeggio. over a basic F major chord, I played an F major 7 arpeggio. Over the G major chord, I did a G dominant 7th arpeggio, and then over the A minor chord, I did an A minor 7 arpeggio. So none of those chords in the rhythm section were 7th chords, but I still played 7th arpeggios anyway. So if I wanted to play just the triads like we did last week, that's fine. If I wanted to add 7ths, that's fine too. You can mix and match whatever you want. I'm just showing you the possible pathways for the 7th variation, which is this week, and then the triad variation, which was last week. All right, so that's going to do it for this week's lesson. One more thing, if you're a full access member of Zombie Guitar already, this lesson here is going to include 5 full access extras, just like last week's lesson did. What a full access extra is just a video backing track that is specific to the lesson at hand. So the lesson that we're looking at this week is applying 7th arpeggio runs over single chords and then combining it all together into a full chord progression. So there's going to be 5 video backing tracks, one for the C chord, one for the F chord, one for the G chord, one for the A minor chord, and then one for the full progression. For each of these video backing tracks, there will be a fretboard diagram displayed on the top of the screen with the notes of focus for that specific chord. Or if it's the full progression, the fretboard diagram will change as the chords change. So there's 5 included with this lesson. That will be coming out in 2 days, maybe 3 days or so, usually a couple days after I release the video. So keep an eye out for that if you're a full member of the site. Other than that, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.